We appreciate your viewership. Thank you very much for watching KTN News. This is the Monday Prime, and very important tonight is to look at the state of the nation. Politics taking, and I can assure you, the very key guests in studio. Baraka Muluka, a strategic communication advisor, is here in studio with us, and Kipruto Kira, who's a governance and policy analyst, is also with us here in studio. But if you follow closely, these are very familiar names to you Kenyans, having served in different capacities as well in matters politics. But even as they give in their opening remarks, gentlemen, it is very good to have you in studio. I want to bring in a few stories so that we are contextualizing the matters in the nation. But first, let me just know how you're doing and your general view of the state of the nation. Barak.
First, thank you very much, Doris. As usual, I'm doing very well. Whenever I place myself on the weighing scales as Barak, I find that I'm doing very well. It's only when I gravitate away from my individual personal space and begin interacting with other spaces, the rest of the nation, if there is one. Last Saturday I was arguing that there's probably no nation. Project Kenya flopped right after we got into the House of Independence in 1963. We are looking forward to Madaraka in a couple of weeks' time, and it will be interesting to interrogate ourselves what we have done with Madaraka, with self-determination.
Indeed. And speaking of, are we really a nation? I know, Honorable Kira, you are a diplomat, so is Barak. And speaking of, are we a nation, a state, a republic? What would be your opening remarks this evening?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you this evening and to share my thoughts with Kenyans. First of all, I do appreciate that the nation is shaped by individuals, particularly the leadership. And at independence, I think we went for three things, which in my opinion was slightly lower than the virtues the nation is to have. We went for fighting ignorance, disease, and poverty. We should have lifted, yes, those are important, and they are still important even up to today. We should have lifted that to better ideals like fighting tribalism, fighting ubabe, in English, where somebody believes that because he's the leader, he lords over us. And of course, fighting udini, saying because I'm a Christian and you're a Muslim, then there is a difference. In that way, we would be able to fight and allow ourselves to mesh in this space called Kenya, so that we become a nation.
All right, President William Ruto is not new to you, Honorable Kira. You have worked closely with the sitting president to give this kind of opening remarks. You must be, looking at the manifesto aligned to the hustler. Is the president deviating from what he promised Kenyans? Let's look at the taxation, his travel, the now jet from Dubai. Are we seeing a shift in what you expected, perhaps, even as you formed the UDA previously?
Well, I think the president is a very good campaigner. He did it very well, and some of us were convinced that his idea of bottom-up was indeed going to change everything in Kenya. But we realized now that he was doing it for the sake of galvanizing the support of Kenyans and also behaving like a true Christian. And I've said the Christian that I know who has aspired to the presidency and took Christianity as his own calling, as an individual person, is President Moi. Because President Moi must have taken that space, realizing that at the end of all these things, as they say, everything is vanity, vanity. He has to go back to his maker. But I cannot say the same about some people in this town. They must be doing it for the sake of playing to the gallery, allowing people to believe them, because at times, even if there was a serious issue, and I tell you, let's close our eyes, we pray, you will submit to that prayer. That's why he prays in his cabinet, and he talks, then he finishes with prayers.
All right.
That is him.
That is him.
Yeah.
Let me hear from Barack. Barack, I want to shift this back a little bit to one of the dailies over the weekend that caught Kenyans' attention. Starved of cash. We're seeing an image there of former President Uhuru Kenyatta. I'm going to be playing that story, and I'd love to hear your thoughts even deeper. But just as opening remarks, I mean, if I read this closely, we're looking at no air tickets provided for official trips abroad, funds for new vehicles frozen. In fact, they're saying ex-president takes care of repair costs. I'm reading directly from these headlines. Contracts not renewed and required staff numbers have not been met. That is for the office of the retired president. As of now, they're talking about fuel to forced to spend his own money to keep official cars running. There's dispute over location of his office, lingering with no cash released for the preferred site, and on allowances, Barack, payments to staff traveling with him for trips is never provided. I don't know if you came across this headline.
Yeah, of course. Naturally, I read the story yesterday.
Yes.
In yesterday's press. I also saw the post on the X platform by Dennis Itumbi, who is one of the functionaries in State House, and of course, one of those random, I would say, functionaries, because they are people whose roles and briefs are not quite clear, but that is also part and parcel of the nature of power in African fragile states, where it's never quite clear who is in government and what they're doing in formal government, if you want. And he was saying something to the effect that retired President Uhuru Kenyatta owes the country monies. He said things pertaining to paying of taxes and things pertaining to other issues that I do not even wish to go into. But I think this is primitive. If I should just be polite, it is primitive, it's obtuse. We are talking about things which are inscribed not just in the law, but in the Constitution. There's a president who has served a term and who has done his tour of duty, regardless of any offenses against society, whether they be offenses of omission, offenses of commission. He is entitled to a retirement package. And I think that it is important to separate things, address issues of what is due to him. And if you think that there has been felonious behavior on his part and which is actionable, take the necessary lawful action. But you cannot employ kangaroo court tactics and deny somebody his retirement benefits. There are other politicians who are also entitled to retirement benefits,
all right,
and who I believe are being paid while they also remain quite active on the political circuit.
Speaking of active in the political circuit, let me just take us back a bit to the weekend. This story was filed by Emmanuel To, just to bring us and the viewers closer to why this discussion is very important. Remember, he served as the president of this republic, not for one term, but 2 terms. But for close to 2 years since leaving office in September 2022, the frosty relations between retired President Uhuru Kenyatta and President William Ruto seem to have intensified, with reports now indicating the government has frozen his budget of close to 1 billion shillings for the past 2 financial years. Even as parliamentary approval, State House has now directed Kenyatta to occupy the Nyari office that was last occupied by the late retired President Mwai Kibaki, saying it will not pay for any other office other than that. As KTN's political affairs reporter Emmanuel To now details, Kenyatta has been seen as shooting himself in the foot in his constant involvement in politics, even after leaving office. Let's take a look at earlier.
William Samoei Ruto.
For many, the war of words and frosty relations between retired President Uhuru Kenyatta and President William Ruto ended here when the former handed over to the latter on September 13th, 2022.
What does this government want? Because if it wants me, The fact that I've been silent doesn't mean I'm scared. Come for me.
However, the war between the friends turned foes is far from over, with the latest reports indicating the President William Ruto's administration has declined to channel the close to 1 billion shillings budget to Kenyatta's office for the past 2 years. Officials in Kenyatta's office say only 28.5 million shillings out of the 655 million shillings approved for the financial year 2022-2023 released being payment for his travel to Ethiopia and Burundi to attend the Heads of State and Government Summit and domestic travel. In the current financial year, no money has been disbursed out of the 443 approved by Parliament. The latest bone of contention being the rent payment for the former president's office, with State House putting its foot down on paying for any other office other than the one reserved for retired presidents.
There's an office complex in Nyari that has been used by previous president, the late President Mwai Kibaki, and he occupied that office for 9 years. It is very well known that the office is there, it is vacant, and President Uhuru Kenyatta can use that office as and when he deems fit to use it.
Reports indicate that Kenyatta's request to have his office, which is next to Dennis Pritt Road, paid for was rejected, with Kenyatta up in arms since other former state officials like the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, among others, got the offices of their choice and are being funded.
There are channels and mechanisms to access budget and provisions in the office of the fourth president.
At some point, Kenyatta had to acquire the help of Uganda President Yoweri Museveni, with this photo of him alighting from the Uganda Airlines plane, raising eyebrows on the fate of the backroom wars between Kenyatta and Ruto. However, the former president has also been seen as the master of his own woes, with his constant involvement in politics and also declaring that he will not retire from politics, erecting barriers to him benefiting as a retired president under the Presidential Retirement Benefits Act.
Siasa mimi nilikuwa nataka nilegee, lakini wameamua ya kwamba kazi itakuwa ya vitisho na kulazimisha.
Anything that is supposed to be given and is constitutional, let it be given. The former president should also, follow tradition, avoid politics, stop playing victim. In any case, nobody wants to deny him.
Apart from being the Azimio chairperson, Uhuru was recently named as the leader of the new political outfit dubbed Haki Coalition following the Limuru 3 meeting. Emmanuel Tor, KTN News, Nairobi.
In politics, Honorable Kirwa, following closely, someone saying he's shooting himself in the foot, and you had, one of the speakers saying, is President, former president just playing victim to this?
Well, I think it is poverty of language, because when you look at it strictly, there are many people who have retired, not retired really, who earn pension. And the pension is a constitutional matter. That's why even in the hierarchy of expenses, the pensioners are paid before even salaries are paid. And the debts abroad also form another charge on the same budget. This therefore means that that is guaranteed to President Uhuru Kenyatta. If there are any things that they feel he might have misadvised himself in the past, they deal with that as a separate matter, but don't mix with pension. If I owe, let's say, AFC, if I owe KCB or any other institution for that matter, or if I owe the state because of certain taxes I have not paid, they should deal with me separate from the pension. I get my pension, then deal with me as an individual, either as a farmer or as a business person. And I know if there are any issues, it could be businesses belonging to the Kenyatta family, but not particularly anything to do directly with Uhuru Kenyatta. The second issue is that we are forming a culture where leaders will be fighting forever. And we are making other people get reluctant to want to support other individuals. Really, we cannot conclusively say President Ruto did not play a role in election of Uhuru twice. But also you should realize that it is Uhuru who introduced him to his community when they combined that it was a referendum against the Hague, and that kind of formation gave confidence to two communities that 5 years prior to that, they were fighting each other in the so-called post-election violence. But 5 years later, they were together because of the challenge coming from The Hague. So at times, give credit where it's due. If Barack supports me to do one thing, I should also support him and also respect that that support, I did not earn it 100%. Possibly in his own wisdom, he realized that let me support so and so.
All right.
So it worries me because it is not about even the current president or the former president. It is the culture we are creating about leadership in Kenya. Now, the former president had a problem with this deputy. The current president seems to have a problem with this deputy. So the common factor here, it is Uhuru Ruto, Ruto Rigathi. So there is a common factor. So you cannot be wrong. I cannot offend Barack and offend you, then you still doubt who is the offending individual in this particular matrix.
Honorable Kira, I'm glad you brought that up because certain voices in analysis, in fact, now just bringing in that power issue. Ruto, Uhuru, bad blood worsens as ex-president denied cash for office. You do realize on that national breakfast, back then, if you look, there was a reconciliatory approach to that matter. So when you see the bad blood worsening, and in fact, in your own words, you've said, we do not want a Kenya where leaders fight forever. All right? But where does this end? Because another Kenyan does not believe this same narrative that you're saying here.
But yeah, we saw a lot of it. And in that place, the current president really made a general apology to his boss at that particular time. Then in Bomas, you could see there was a lot of also altercations between the two individuals. Now, at times, we really need to fundamentally question the role of a deputy president and whether we should not see how do we clean it in a way that at the end of the day, when you are a sitting deputy president, you do not run in the intervening period so that we allow the president to achieve his agenda. And if you want to run for presidency, you go away for 5 years to allow you to come as an individual so that we don't mix the current regime and the future regime. It worries me, but more fundamentally, why don't we as leaders separate personal issues from what belongs to the state and the public?
Barack, let's get to this power concern because when history repeats itself, it's very detrimental. Honorable Kira has mentioned that something seemingly is happening that happened during the Jubilee administration between the sitting president and the deputy. And to that fact, some have poked holes in our constitution, saying our constitution has been created in a way that deputies seemingly threaten their superiors, and thus where we are right now. Deputy President Gachagua, however, resurfaced on Sunday, but after voices claimed that he was silent for a long time, 11 state events with his absence. Is it a problem with our constitution?
I don't think there's a problem with our constitution. We are not the only country in the world that has got that kind of constitution where you have a presidential candidate and a running mate, and eventually they assume office together in the institution that we call the presidency. The issues here are purely personal or personality issues and a mixing of things that are completely unrelated. If a deputy president has political ambitions beyond occupying the office of deputy president, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Whether that deputy president is William Ruto during that tour of duty or whether it is Rigathi Gachagua, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And there's also nothing wrong with that deputy beginning to send feelers sufficiently early. And I say this with the full knowledge that in the past, when Dr. William Ruto was the one at the center stage, my position was that he was being treated unfairly. And just now I'll say the same things, that he's also treating his deputy unfairly. You will remember that on the day that he took the oath of office, he particularly raised this specific issue and said under his rule, his deputy would not suffer the kind of suffering or treatment that he underwent. He must have known that he behaved in a certain way, and therefore he must have meant that even if his deputy were to perform in that particular way, he would understand, and so he ought to understand. But very quickly, when you look at these two gentlemen, you look at President Uhuru Kenyatta, you look at Rigathi Gachagua. I have heard a journalist say that President Uhuru is shooting himself in his foot. I'm a trainer of journalists, and fortunately I did not train that particular one. If I had trained him, he would not say the things that he's saying.
All right.
Now, look at it this way. Uhuru Kenyatta has been more known for being absent from the political scene. But it's also true that the new government came into office, and from day one, they were throwing barbs his way all the time. From day one, before they even got into office, they were talking about the empty coffers that they were inheriting. They were talking about the handshake brothers who had moved billions of shillings from the national treasury. They were talking about corruption here, corruption there. They were even doing demos and trespassing onto the Kenyatta property, killing animals, setting some of them on fire.
That was during the protests?
During the protests. Yes. Is he supposed just to keep quiet? If he says something about it, then that would appear to be playing politics. Now, his party, Jubilee, he was denied the opportunity to undertake the normal succession activities within the party. It was raided. William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta had the KANU party handed over to them by President Moi after Moi had been in retirement for a couple of weeks. It was also a factor of the reality that although President Kibaki would later on raid KANU, he did not raid it at that moment in time. So these things of saying, oh, he's playing politics, he's doing politics, people have got the freedom of association and the right to speak, and to have an opinion. And Rigi G, on the other hand, has been absent for about a week. He had not yet caused my eyebrows to be raised, but I also know that he's consistently under assault by youthful subaltern politicians. Yeah, subalterns.
You termed it assault.
Yeah, verbal assault.
All right.
Yeah, there's such a thing as verbal assault, isn't there? Yeah, but by these subalterns, Didi Nyoro, Kimani Ichung'wah, Moses Kuria, Sudi, and other subalterns really who need to be taught good conduct. You see, in Africa, one of the things we do is we respect elders, even within the political space. There's a manner in which we deal with them. And if you are attacking me, you expect me at the very minimum to fend off the blow. But I might also throw in a few punches of my own. If you call that bad political behavior, so be it.
Let me hear from Honorable Kira, because as you're speaking, in fact, some members of parliament, I'll mention them by name a bit later, have come out in defense of the deputy president, saying all these things you're talking about, him being absent in major events, are all propaganda, speculations, and some few people trying to fight him as a deputy president in his position. But also, the question now is, you see, Limuru 3 just concluded on Friday. If you follow closely, Honorable Kirwa, because we're going in that direction, the names is mentioned. Looking at this particular group of people coming in to appoint, or if I would use that word, propose that the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, is the head of the lead, this new coalition, Haki coalition. And I don't know where that places Mount Kenya now. In fact, there's another daily here saying what Uhuru camp wants in Mount Kenya, embattled deputy president and a restless Mount Kenya. So the first time Mount Kenya is very big on matters politics. You followed the Limuru 3, we concluded, some saying it's more divisive than it is uniting. What would be your remarks this far?
Well, it is useful that we have national conversation. I've always maintained that we do not have organic political parties that can stand the test of time. That's why for the last 25 years, every formation of every government after 5 years has been done by different political entities, whether it is a coalition, whether it's a political party, from the days of all the way to the days of Jubilee and now Kenya Kwanza. So we need to have national conversation. It's only that when the people from the mountain come together, many of us almost get worried because we have always assigned them the role of a big brother. Perhaps because of their numbers, perhaps because of the central position they control in the country, including part of the economy. But the issue is simple. Let us meet as communities, accept that tribalism is really in Kenya. We cannot pretend that we are not tribal. But when we are tribal, let us manage and allow ourselves to move into vessels that are supposed to transcend the tribe for purposes of creating genuine national unity. But this pretends that there is no tribalism in Kenya is something that I cannot take to the bank, because there is really tribalism. The second issue is there is trust deficit in Kenya. People don't trust each other. And because there is lack of trust, that's why even the constitution that we have is much bigger than the original constitution of 1963. And that of 1963, we almost did amendments as many times as we thought about it. By the time we are promulgating the 2010 constitution, we had done more than 34 amendments to the old constitution. Look at the Constitution of America. It's small, 26 pages, but they have had it for the last 200 years with very few amendments, because it's supposed to be the framework. But we almost want to legislate everything. Even the space that I'm occupying, we are almost saying, thou shalt allow everybody to breathe free air. So it is something that is worrying me. And the second issue is that the position of the deputy president, I'm not trying to defend it because it is regarding Gachagua holding it. That is a constitutional office. And if we are going to spend resources to safeguard that particular office, we must give it some respect and we must protect it from any assault, whether politically or even financially. Just like what we are talking about, the resources to the former president, is the same thing that we must safeguard the position of each and every individual as long as we've given them that office. The danger, Doris, is anytime there is some kind of misunderstanding between the president and his deputy, we waste a lot of time, we waste a lot of resources, because people are no longer consulting, they are actually fighting each other. Because the last 5 years, we were blaming it on the handshake. But what is very clear is that even before the election of 2018, there was already some disquiet between the two leaders. And it is after elections that it came full-blown, that the two are no longer together.
But you see, Honorable Kira, the deputy president we are speaking of here just saw off the president. When he's leaving for America, we all saw that. Barack, you saw.
But the body language. For those students who have read body language, we realize the two were not at best.
Absolutely.
And just in the same afternoon, the previous afternoon.
Okay.
The same afternoon, the governor of Nyeri, and that's the governor of the deputy president, made a very strong statement about the fact that the deputy president is under a lot of assault from the system that is part of.
All right, Barack.
Yeah, the problem here, and I think that Honorable Kirwa touched on it a little bit at the start. When we got into the House of Freedom, we failed to address the most fundamental issue that had been taking us to Lancaster. We were going to Lancaster because we were going to look for ways and means of reinventing ourselves as a new nation. Not necessarily as a new republic. Yes, the republic is a part of it, and we became a republic the following year after independence in 1964, became a full republic. But we were going to Lancaster mostly because of the challenge of nationhood. That we would now be fusing these diverse people who had been brought together without being consulted by the European colonial presence. Remember, before the partition, 1894-95, we were independent entities, roving on the landscape, and we would use the might of our spears and arrows and shields, or whatever it was, to extend our space. Then the Europeans decided to put us, among other African people, into these pockets. And we get to a point where, as part of a bigger international community, we are going to remain with those boundaries. And we are going to have to live in under a new dispensation, a new constitution, new laws, because the British are going away with their crown and with their crown laws. So what happens to us? And so we decide we are going to stay together. Some say, let us have a federalist republic. Others are saying, no, let us have a unitarian republic. Now the challenge then becomes that we do not quite build in mechanisms of managing ethnic diversity. And so we have remained in that space where ethnic diversity becomes a problem. That leads us to a context where communities are worried about who is going to occupy State House, because it's been demonstrated that when you occupy State House, then it is time for you and your tribe to lord it over everybody else. You can look around on the landscape and see a community that has got huge numbers, and you can coax them to come and work with you during the campaign season to help you to get to power. Basically, you are using these people as a horse. Sometimes we are saying that there are going to be two horses, you know, in the race. And the horses are actually tribes. And there is a fellow from a certain tribe who is riding this horse. And when he gets to State House, you can look at the people he's appointing. 6 out of 10 are from his tribe. The remaining 4 have got an understudy each from his tribe. And so if and when you are a little more enlightened politically, you will get together, like the people of Central Kenya, Mount Kenya are doing, and do an audit. And there's nothing wrong. In fact, I'd like to encourage my people, the Abaluya. I'm a Luya from Emanyuria in Kakamega. I would like to encourage them to also have a Buhungu meeting, to also do an audit of how they are sitting in this government, and to encourage the Akamba and the Kisi and everybody, and even the smaller communities, to also do their own audit. And then they can get back to the table and say, let us have a Lancaster House conference here in Nairobi and decide where we want to take
interesting approach. I'll come back to Honorable Kirwa to hear if members of his community should also come together. But I have a few bites to throw in, gentlemen, to see how the Mount Kenya region, if I would say that, at least the ones we had speak, are feeling about the administration. In fact, Meeting at iconic venue signals start fresh of battle. I'm reading from one of the dailies over the weekend that has implications on national politics as new formation is unveiled in restless, now the term is restless, mountain region, which Deputy President has been struggling to unite, with grievances ranging from taxation to allocation of resources, taking center stage, and Uhuru Kenyatta's name dominating the speeches. But what is their new game plan? And I think Baraka said, using a community to get into power. I mean, some voices have said they have been betrayed. One of the very key voices is Honorable Omushomba, saying she will not be threatened for saying what she believes. Let's take a few voices from the Mount Kenya region on this matter.
Kama mbaya, but he will not be taken through that. Hatutaruhusu. He will not be taken through that. Hakupewa kiti na mtu, alingangania. Na hicho kiti kura tulizozipiga ndizo zilimpa deputy president. And he is not a deputy president by default. Ni mpango wetu na yeye ndiye ameshikilia mlima. So, ningetaka nitangaze nikiwa hapa kwa kanisa. Madharau yoyote kwa Rigathi Gachagua ni madharau ya mlima. Kweli uongo.
Second highest position, the deputy president of the republic anatoka Mount Kenya. Tuambiane ukweli. The majority leader of the National Assembly anatoka Mount Kenya. The chair of finance committee in parliament anatoka Mount Kenya. The chair of budget in parliament anatoka Mount Kenya. The treasury CS anatoka Mount Kenya. The land CS anatoka Mount Kenya. Ai, my friend, ni nini ingine mnataka bwana? Watu wengine wako. You cannot be blackmailing the president every time.
Ma TV ine athiye kure Uhuru maikareze maciria matuika kindu kimwe.
Kuma riu gutire hindi mena andu milioni kenda magacoka gutuika running mate ya mundu wina 1.9 million. Never again. How can you have 9 million votes? Muthure mundu wina 1.9 million. Kuma riu thio nithio turetongoragia running mate watufuate.
Honorable Kira, just a few, all right? But you see, when they took over power in 2022, Deputy President Gachagua declared that freedom had come. As President Ruto promised that his deputy would not undergo the tribulations just mentioned, as Barack said earlier on. But look at that. You said you're a student of body language?
Yes.
Is this good for the country? Barack said he would encourage people from his
conversation. I didn't say
so
walk. I didn't say walk.
This does not look like a conversation.
That's a war cry. It's not a conversation.
Okay.
But conversations must take place.
Honorable Kira.
Doris, I think it's very interesting, but I always believe that in a civilized society such as ours, we can resolve some of these conflicts if we are able to go to the fundamentals. You see, what is the real war? The issue is not even about the positions that somebody is a majority leader, somebody is this, somebody is that. The war is fundamentally about resources. That's why the Rigathi Gachagua, just a few days before Limuru 3, he talked about one vote, one shilling, one person, 1 shilling.
One vote, some add 1 kilometer.
Yes.
Yes.
So, but because we have refused, I've told you that we have a problem of trust deficit. The next problem is that we pretend a lot. Why am I saying this? If the issue is about resources, why don't we put on the table and we create enough permutations that what are the 3 parameters or 4? The ones I can quickly remember is population should not be ignored. It is an important factor. But we must also realize that some of the people, you may have 20,000 people in a constituency, but the constituency is so expansive that certain services cannot get to the people in good time.
Honorable Kira, I'm sorry to interject.
Yes.
You served as Minister of Agriculture
in
Kibaki's administration.
Yes.
You have served, of course, and we have a constitution that has served since 2010. We have revenue allocations. We have budgets.
Yes.
Now we're looking at the Finance Bill 2024.
Yes.
I mean, what's new this far? We have even surpassed our constitutional review, which is not anyone's fault, but our own.
No, I think possibly I'm not communicating well. What I'm saying is that there are 3 fundamental things, in my opinion, that can serve in terms of the resource that we are fighting. And at this stage, because those who do conflict management, they tell me there are two sources of conflict. One is resources, the other one is belief. So we are at the point of resources. What is the problem with the resources? It is because we must appreciate population is a factor, the landmass is a factor, and also historical challenges or injustice is a factor. The three combined and given different weighting measures, we can get enough permutations that as leaders, we don't have to go to the calculations. We'll be given permutations. In this permutation, this is what we are saying for Kakamega, because of landmass and population. This is what we are saying for Trans Nzoia. This is what we are saying for Kiambu. This is what we are saying for Homa Bay. And once we agree nationally, we will not be fighting. Otherwise, this is just sponsored to polarize the country. Because I think the sitting president is a bit unsure of the Mount Kenya bloc. And therefore, he has to create enough trouble in Mount Kenya so that when he goes fishing elsewhere, Mount Kenya is already in trouble because there is unease in Mount Kenya. Mount Kenya is feared because they comprise 26% of the voting bloc in Kenya. And if they were to combine with Akamba, they will close to 32%. And this therefore means it is going to be a serious problem for the sitting president or somebody who wants to aspire to the presidency. You cannot ignore that bloc. Now, neither can you ignore other blocs because the current constitution is very kind. It is not simple majority. It is 50% plus one vote, which means, and also certain number of counties must also be put into consideration for you to be declared the president of the republic. So you have to navigate this landscape carefully without having a rough shot on some of the individuals. The second issue that is very important for us is that leaders should be careful on how not to raise tribal emotions.
Tribal emotions, okay.
Because some of the statements you are seeing, somebody reading from one corner of the republic and the other corner, we are polarizing the country. And once we polarize the country, it is impossible to bring it back to the center.
All right, let me just bring this also close. And you've said something very important. Tribal emotions. And we do know, we do not want to look at the very ugly pasts of this country, 2007, 2008, because the victims are watching this morning that this would be very sensitive too. But we are approaching 2027. Constitutionally, we must vote 2027. Voices are saying, Honorable Barack, that 2027 politics are unnecessary at this point in time. But we see convening, meetings here, speaking of we are forging forward and preparing for 2027 for the sake of our people. Do you think these priorities are misplaced?
Practically speaking, there is the campaigns for the next season begin the day after the swearing in of the government.
All right.
Those who are privileged to occupy government and to exercise political power begin campaigning by working for the people, not going out on the stumps. But we have seen that those in government have been out on the stumps. We have seen that those in the opposition have been out in the stumps. The opposition began by resisting. For a moment, I think they gave the impression that they thought they would find a way of squeezing President Ruto out of State House. You recall they used to say we are going to do a 1 million man march to State House and we are going to get him out of State House. They were calling his government his Serikali Bandia. They did not even want to recognize him or to refer to him as His Excellency the President. In the fullness of time, they have eaten humble pie. They have accepted that Ruto is there, even if they have not come out to declaratively state so. But they recognize that there is a president, they attend some of his presidential functions, and they do so knowing that there is a president in power in State House. But they are also organizing themselves. You can see they are going around recruiting members, re-energizing the branches, and talking about the next election, as indeed they should. So their task is at once to checkmate the government on ongoing activities, but also to start positioning themselves as government in waiting. On the other hand, it is the role of government to deliver. And when it delivers, it will be citing the scorecard as its brag sheet for the next electoral cycle. The president,
yes,
President Ruto, has been going around the country, and especially in the mountain region, and maybe even elsewhere, telling people things like, we will do this, tunapanga hii, we have this plan. Also behaving as if he is speaking like someone who is outside government and who is preparing for the 2027 elections. And in a sense, I agree with my brother here. It's like he believes that the mountain is slipping through his fingers. And if the mountain is slipping through his fingers, he has got to find legitimate reasons to pick up upon someone else as a running mate. And the sitting deputy president must be made to look as delinquent as possible. And in the process, therefore, send the subalterns that I talked about earlier on to hurl insults, because they are political insults that are hurled at DP Gachagua every day. And therefore, you start seeing the likes of the Nyeri governor issuing these war cries. In principle,
yes,
the competition is good. It is healthy. In practice, how it's being done is dangerous because it starts whipping up sentiment. When I say, for example, that people should discuss, they should talk, the people of the mountain have every right to audit the dividend that they are getting out of this government and to, in fact, juxtapose it with the vote capacity that they had and what they delivered. And other people as well. The Luo let them do the same.
All right.
The Mijikenda let them do the same. But they can do so without screaming and issuing war cries. And if they feel that they have been served a dirty dish, it is within their right. You know, politics all over the world are canvassed in forums that constitute identity groups. They could be ethnic identity groups, regional identity groups, religious identity groups, gender-based identity groups,
right.
And we cannot demonize them.
We cannot demonize them. It is almost rather inconclusive. But even so, we have a country that must run. And continentally, we are not an island, so we do have international relations. I want to tap into the president's tour. The 4-day tour in the United States, it might be a very short moment for us.
Here.
Yes, and I understand with the diplomat in the house. Even before the state, event, the travel to the US. I think I sat with you in a different platform, Kira, and we spoke about Kenyans criticized President Ruto's travels, quite some beat. And now we're looking at a whole different, approach here with another plane, very interesting plane. How much it's costing Kenyans in millions? The economical analysis around it, and I just want to hear from you because one side he has to do what he has to do, and the other side Kenyans feel taxpayers' money is not really what he said, cutting down the expenditure kind of picture.
Yeah. Thank you, Doris. I think before we go there, I just wanted. With the risk of being criticized by the communication expert here, to inform the Mount Kenya group that they have not made any crime, a mistake at all, but they just need to improve their communication in terms of identifying the issues that cut across. Because if it is the issue of taxation, we are all feeling it. If it is the issue of corruption, we are all feeling it. The issue of fertilizer that you can see now is being swept under the carpet. We are all feeling it. And the more they identify some of those issues, and the more they communicate it in a way that people realize they are not, it is not Kalenjin Kikuyu fight. It is a regime that has run amok. Not all Kalenjins are enjoying. We may keep quiet just because it is convenient that one who bears a name like mine is in power. Otherwise, there's nothing so special that we are getting as Kalenjins. If it is fake fertilizer, it is also getting to us.
Is it you're not getting extra positions as some suppose?
Those positions are actually reserved for cronies. If you are to go critically, you realize that these are the people who have worked with the president for quite some time. You are giving to individual families, but note that when there is a mass employment, like the military, our people pay 800,000, 600,000 for a boy to get to the military.
Is it factual?
It is factual.
All right, Honorable. Yeah, you can back it up.
One of the days, just go there with a young man who qualifies. You will realize that you will be required to raise not less than 400 if it is the police, 600 if it's the military. They have not changed. If you go to Ziwa Market, the constituency that the president represented when he was an MP, if you are to arrest all those guys, you can start a bank in Ziwa Market. New bank, because there is enough money with parents waiting to buy the positions for their children. It's happening.
What does this do to my viewer today, the trust deficit, Barak? Because, Honorable Kirwa, I want to come back to you because of your closing remarks, but you've mentioned something very important that I'd like to hear Honorable Barak speak on as well. Because not every Kenyan, looking at the taxes, looking at, of course, Ambassador Megan Whitman also spoke on this, saying you might want to give more employment before you increase the tax bracket. But what he is saying, I don't think every parent right now has that 400 to 600,000 in their account.
They sell their parcels of land.
Yes, Mheshimiwa has raised a number of crucial issues. There's the question of ethnicity and the perceived benefits.
Yes.
Of course, it's a cronies club. When we say things like, and I did say that earlier on, did I not?
You did?
That out of every 10, 6 will be from the community. And that is a fact. Yeah? The schedules are there, we can go and have a look at them. But it's also a fact that even when you are from the community, you have got to belong to the cronies club. So that my neighbor here may be from the same community, but he's not politically correct. Therefore, he can only watch from outside, like the rest of us. And the other issue is, of course, the question of corruption, and which cuts across. It even starts right there. That's why people will say things like, it is our turn to eat. It's about government and people in government doing business with government, and locking out everyone else. It's about tenders to supply both real and fake supplies. You are lucky that you have got fake fertilizers. Sometimes it's fake as fake, that there is absolutely nothing being supplied, and yet funds leave the treasury and they end up in certain persons' pockets. Those are the fundamental questions that need to be addressed. People who are poor are selling property, are selling land. And sometimes, even after you have parted with that 500,000 shillings, you still don't get that chance.
Honorable Kirwa, I just want to get your closing remarks on this matter, and I'm sure I might have you guys again just to speak about the travels. But what would be your closing remarks? The president is out there.
Yes.
We have our business, team just looking at some of the economic benefits that we might have, and the U.S. and Kenya have been doing quite a number of things together recently. But in as far as this specific tour is concerned, what would be your closing remarks to this discussion together with that?
Well, I think it's a PR exercise because, of course, we say, in terms of international relations, you say what is in it for us. But what I know, the current regime does not say what is in it for us as a country, what is in it for me as the main guy in town. And therefore, possibly has already gotten what is in it for him. That's why he had to almost put the boys and girls perhaps into another plane on their way to Haiti for purposes of committing almost something that is akin to human destruction, because there is no mission that has gone to Haiti and come back. And they are supposed to go and keep peace, and there's no peace in Haiti. There's no agreement that is valid between us and the government of Haiti, because the fellow who came to town was smuggled into airport. He was not elected, and he did not even go back to Haiti. He resigned when he was away from Haiti. And America, because they have a base there, why don't they put their boys and girls there? Why are they taking our boys to give to a guy called Barbecue, who literally roasts people?
He's going to barbecue them.
He's going to barbecue them, and we've seen it before. So we feel the president has done a lot of travels. We appreciate perhaps some of the trips are useful, but this particular one is not useful.
All right. Saying this particular one is not useful, Barack, as we close this, discussion, do you share the sentiments that this...
international relations are about opportunities, global opportunities, and seeking advantage within that international global space. Some of the assignments can be done by diplomats, and I say that fully aware that there's one seated next to me.
All right.
It's not particularly essential that the head of state and the government should be the one who is gallivanting all over the place. And he becomes very high maintenance, very costly. And therefore, we ought to find more affordable ways of achieving those goals. Ultimately, it should not be the question of who has gone. It should be more a question of the goals that we want.
Right.
But there is a sense in which we are hobnobbing to the Americans and fawning, ingratiating ourselves before the Americans, that they can say we are the good boys of Africa, and hopefully make this the place. I'm not so sure about the advantages that we are going to gain. You see, when Mr. Hussein Mohammed is addressing us and is talking about what they're going to... Yeah, he should also be telling us about what we expect. Some of those things end up in the docket of sovereign debt, which is never fully disclosed. And in the fullness of time, we hear that we are servicing debts that we don't know anything much about. But let's expect that when they do come back, they will give us an audit of that trip. And I think we need an audit of all the other trips that have been made.
Indeed, that's a great challenge to us here in the media. Thank you very much, Barack Muluka, for that. And I will personally, together with my team right here at KTN News, follow up on these audits as is required of us. Accountability, integrity as such are also enshrined in our Constitution. Thank you for creating time to be here tonight. Honorable Barack Muluka and also Honorable Kipruto Arap-Kira. You are both honorable Kenyans.
He's a doctor.
Me, I'm just a scholar. I'm just a scholar.
Thank you.
He's the honorable
But
one.
I think it's the most honorable thing for you, gentlemen, to do, to be here at 10 to 11 p.m. for the sake of the Kenyans. I appreciate you.
Thank
you.
And
for the viewer watching this morning, we totally appreciate your viewership, your contribution to building this great country. Question remains, is it a nation, a republic, or a state?
A group of people.
Or a group of people. And somebody once said, your greatest resource, ultimately, is your time. Thank you for sharing that time with us. My name is Anki Dorisombat. Until tomorrow, keep it KTN News, where we give you the whole story. Stay woke. Have a good night.